Hello, this is Ajahn Brahm, and I wish to welcome everybody to my 70th birthday celebrations at Jhana Grove. And this year it's going to be a special celebration. We're not going to have an arms round on that day. I'm going to fast. That gives me a chance to enjoy my 71st birthday the year afterwards, because sometimes you eat so much food that it's a danger to my health, especially an old monk like me. And I wish everybody to, if you'd like to come along, instead we're going to have an auction of very nice items to enhance your physical health, your spiritual strength, things like my meditation cushion, things like my robe will be auctioned. This one will be auctioned as well, and have a lot of fun for the day. So those who want to celebrate the birthday, please go online, see that website. And for this year, because I don't want to receive anything for myself, all the donations are going to go for a retreat centre over in Melbourne. That's in the grounds of Newbury Buddhist Monastery, where many of my monks go and spend the Vassa and go and help out. And I am their spiritual advisor, but it makes a very decent donation for all my supporters. It does mean that those donations are some of the greatest merit. The gift of Dhamma exceeds all other gifts. And this is giving people the gift of seeing the Dhamma for themselves by going to a nice retreat centre in the east coast of Australia. And that's the retreat centre at Newbury Buddhist Monastery. So I wish everybody a very happy time, and I hope to see you there on August the 7th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Jhana Grove Retreat Centre over in Perth, to make another retreat centre over in Melbourne. So all blessings of my birthday to you all, and many happy returns to Jhana Grove on the 7th of August.
Good morning, Ajahn.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. It's just you and me in this hall today again, Ajahn. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the BSV Sunday Dhamma Talk. As you know, as most of you would know, we are currently in a lockdown in Melbourne. The BSV is currently closed until further notice. There isn't any announcements other than that, but what I would like to take an opportunity to do is maybe tell people about the Ajahn Brahm's 70th birthday celebrations, which you saw the promotional video for just a moment ago. So I'm just going to try and share a little bit about that here. There are a few things. This is the website here. There's a countdown timer there, about 13 days to go. There is a lot of activities or ways to participate in this if you follow through on the menu there. But a couple of things I'd like to just point out here is the page here, which is Celebrate With Us. It's got quite a few things to participate in, with the birthday cards, happy birthday wishes. And also starting at the end of this week is a online global meditation metta retreat. There is a number of sessions happening every day, so it's a great opportunity for everyone to participate in this. So Prem from the BSWA has led this activity, and I think it's a fantastic idea as part of Ajahn Brahm's birthday celebrations. So that's about it. We probably can start on the talk. Go back to that.
Okay, so yeah, once again, good morning, everybody. Everybody tuning in online, whether you're in Melbourne or whether you're in Sydney or anywhere in Australia at the moment, or if you're tuning in from somewhere overseas, I really do appreciate you tuning in at this point in time, whether it's very late for you in the night or very early in the morning. So I really do appreciate you. It's tuning in for it. It's very nice to have, even though it's just me and Sujut here at the moment. It's nice to know that there are that some people out there in the ether that are listening to this. So we'll just for anybody that maybe doesn't know, my name is Ajahn Sādaro, and I have been a monk for many years now, ordained in Thailand, and this year I will actually be spending the Vassa period at the Buddhaloka Centre here in Melbourne East at the BSV. So that's what I'll talk about. I'll have a bit of a talk about today. I'll talk about the rains retreat and things like that. But before we do that, we usually start by doing some chanting, asking for the 3 refuges and 5 precepts, then doing a little bit of chanting, and then I'll give the talk. So, do you want to just do the I'll say it, then you say it kind of thing? Yeah. Okay. Do you want to ask for the 5 precepts, or just do it? Okay. Well. That will work. That will work.
Okay, I don't quite have the verses handy, but
it's fine. You're juggling a lot of things at the moment, so it's fine.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Asking for the 5 precepts. So
may I request the 5 precepts?
You may. Okay. So I'll start by doing Namo.
Yep.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Ti sarana kamanang nittitang.
Amabante.
Panatipata ueramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana ueramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara ueramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musawada ueramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura merya majjapamadhatana ueramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Suramereya majjapamadatthana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikapadani silena sukhatinyanti silena bhoga sampada silena nipputinyanti dasama silang visotaye.
Sadhu, sadhu.
So we'll do some short chanting now. We'll do the recollection of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and we'll do the Metta Sutta. We'll do the recollection of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha in Pali, and do the Metta Sutta in English. So you can chant along at home if you like. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vichacharana sampanno sukhato lokavidu anuttaro purisa dhammasarati sattha devamanusana buddho bhagavati Sawakato bhagavata dhammo santitiko akaliko ehipasiko opanayiko paccatang veditapo vinyuhiti Supatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Ujjupatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Yayapatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Samicipatipanno bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho Yadidang Tari purisa yukani atta purisa pukala esa bhagavato sāvaka saṅgho ahunayo pahunayo dakinayo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punya ketang lokasati. So we'll do the Buddha's words on loving kindness in English. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another, or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart one should cherish all living beings, radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to wrong views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami ito parang sakajang dhammo sota bodhi. So again, I'd like to welcome everybody that's tuned in online. Just quickly before I start, if you do have any questions for this, please write them in the chat, and we'll get to them after I give a short talk. And so, what I thought I'd actually talk about today is actually it's a special day on the at least on the Theravada Buddhist calendar, as today is the entry to the Rains Retreat, or what's also known as the Buddhist Lent, or we also call it the Vassa period. So it's a very special day for Buddhist monastics. We determined to stay in the one place for the next 3 months. But also yesterday was actually quite a special day on the Buddhist calendar as well. It was a day called Asala Puja, which is the day that the that the Buddha gave the first Dhamma teaching. So this period of time on the Buddhist calendar is actually quite special for us Buddhists. So that's what I thought I'd actually go over today. I thought I'd go over what actually the Buddhist Lent is, what the Rains Retreat is, what are some of the rules that we, as monastics, we abide by during the Rains Retreats period, and also what do we actually do at the time? How do lay people associate with us at this time, and how it actually pertains maybe to you in your life as well. But then I'll also talk a little bit about Asala Puja as well, and how these two things, Asala Puja and the Rains Retreat, they tie together, because there's something very special about this time. So yeah, to start with, what is the Rains Retreat? What is the Vassa? Maybe some people don't actually know what the Vassa is. They don't know what the Rains Retreat is. If you've maybe grown up in a Buddhist country, you'd probably know that it's a 3-month period of time where we as monastics, we stay put in the one place, and our Rains Retreat period, it coincides with the rainy season throughout areas of Asia. The rainy season lasts for about 4 months, but the Buddha made the stipulation that we as monastics should stay in the one place for 3 months. And anybody that's been in the rainy season in areas of Asia will know it rains a lot, so it's pretty hard to move around. And actually you can sort of see that at the moment. Say in India, there's like a big flood in India at the moment. Also parts of China, it's flooding as well. So a lot of rain happens at this period of time. So this, having it rain so much, it makes it very inconvenient, or made it very inconvenient for the monks and nuns to move around at the time, because monks and nuns usually, wandered around. So obviously 2,560 plus years ago in India, roads and things like that weren't very good. So it wasn't conducive for the monastics to stay outside during that period of the Rains Retreat. Mostly monastics lived under trees and things like that. So the Buddha made that stipulation that we stay put for 3 months, at least 3 months out of the 4 months rainy season period. Now, one of the stipulations about having the Rains Retreat and doing the Rains Retreat is that we as monastics, as I said, we have to stay put for about 3 months. And so we determined to stay in one place for 3 months. And that you can stay in a monastery, so you can stay with other monastics, so you can stay like 5, 10, 15, 20 of you, 100 of you, whatever, or you can just stay by yourself, or just 1 or 2 or 3. It doesn't matter how many monastics there are that you're staying with. But the only stipulation about our rules is we have to actually stay in a place that has that is a dwelling that actually has a proper roof and it has a proper door. So, and that was obviously to keep the rain out and all these kinds of things, but also it was a way for the monastics, not to, at that time you can't stay under a tree and all that kind of thing, and so for the rains retreat period, you can't stay just out in the forest. You can't stay in a cave. You can't stay in like a hollowed out tree. There's a cool thing in our rules where the Buddha says, don't stay in during the rains retreat. Don't stay in a hollowed out tree because you are like goblins if you do that. So we can't act like goblins during the 3 months rains retreat. So as long as you have a place that has a proper roof and a proper door, then you can stay there. As I said, you can stay by yourself or with many other monastics. So usually what we do is before the rains retreat starts, we'll sort of decide where we're going to stay, and a few weeks beforehand, get the place ready and just make sure everything's shipshape with it or whatever. So with that as well, another part of our rules as well is that actually you can stay in an interesting thing is you can stay in like a caravan as well. And a caravan can be moving as long as it has a roof and a door. You can stay with a caravan. The caravan can be moving around, but you can determine to stay the rains in that spot. So it's not obviously most monastics these days stay put in one spot, but it is possible to sort of move around as long as you have those roof and the door. So as we determined to stay for 3 months in one place, that does what constitutes staying for 3 months in one place is we have to greet every dawn in the place where we determine. So the building that we've determined to actually stay in, you have to be there in the dawn of that day. If you say you determine to stay in a place and you go for a wander at 4 o'clock in the morning and you don't get back before dawn, then you've actually broken your rains retreat period. Now, if you've broken your reins, it's only actually a small offence for us to break our reins. It's only an offence called a dukkata, which is an offence of wrongdoing, which is analogous to, not wearing your robe neatly and all these kinds of things. But the more, you could say, the more serious side of it is if you break your reins, then you can't partake in what we call the katina privileges. So if there's 5 of you staying together and you have a katina, you can have particular kinds of katina privileges later. So, but anyway, you have to stay in that spot for every dawn. Now, so what does this actually mean then? Does that mean we're totally housebound? We can't leave the little room that we're in. We can't leave the hut that we're in at all. No, it actually doesn't mean that. If there is something where we have what's called legitimate 7-day business, we can go away for a period of 7 days or 6 nights, and we can go away from the place where we've determined to stay for the Vassa. But we can't just get up and wander off and go. You have to, like we determined to stay in the one place, you have to make a determination and tell another monastic or something that I'm going away on 7-day business, but I'll be back before dawn on the 7th day. So you can go away for a period of time and come back if you have something necessary to do. So some of the things that are considered legitimate 7-day business it's actually pretty broad. We can, if somebody asks us to come and actually teach the Dhamma, then we can go and teach. If somebody wants us to go and make merit, we can do that. Also things like with our fellow practitioners, fellow monastics, if they're starting to have doubts about the holy life, they want to disrobe, or they have doubts about an offence, or that they're sick or something like that, we can go and help look after them or help alleviate their doubts in that time. Likewise, if it's a member of our family or something and they're sick and they need our help, we can go for up to 7 days and help look after them. So you can do this as many times as you need to. So ostensibly you can, determine to stay in one place, ask to go away for 6 nights, come back, stay there 1 night, then go away again 6 nights if you want. So you can actually do that. Most monastics don't do that, but it is possible just in case you do have something that you really do need to do. And so if you do 7-day allowable business, then it's fine. You don't actually break your rains retreat. But there is other instances where we can change where we've determined to stay for the rains without actually breaking our rains retreat. In that, if we've decided to stay in a place, but maybe the place is like dangerous, there's wild animals or something, or there's, like in the time of the Buddha, obviously there was bandits and all these kinds of things. So if you're staying in a place and it's not safe, then you can leave without breaking your reins. Also, if you're staying in a place and you can't get enough of the 4 requisites or the food or something like that, it's not making you sick, you can actually leave and go to another place. So there are these, and also another cool one in that is like if you're thinking of disrobing, somebody's trying to tempt you to disrobe, you can leave that place. But another, even cooler part of that is if you've decided to stay in a place and you find abandoned treasure in that place, and you think, cool, there's this abandoned treasure, I'm wealthy now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to go out and live a life of luxury. You can leave if you've found that abandoned treasure, and so it doesn't tempt you to leave anywhere, leave the holy life. So you can change where you've determined to stay the rains if there's a good enough reason. So while we're doing the rains retreat as well, it is a period where we sort of put aside a lot of the projects, the external projects that we might be doing, and we spend more time actually practicing, and we might make sort of determinations and things like this. But the Buddha also stipulated that we can't make what you'd call like ridiculous vows or silly vows. Say, for example, you can't determine to not speak at all for the 3 months because you have to live in proximity with other people, you have to communicate with them. You can't make determinations to not let somebody partake in any of the requisites in the community. You can't do sort of silly things like that. But you can make different kinds of determinations around your practice, and only if it's something that's helpful for you in your practice. Now, if we do this and we stay put for the 3 months rains retreat, and we don't break the reins and all these kinds of things, at the end of the 3 months, if you've stayed in a place that has more than 4 monastics, 5 monastics, you can partake in this really, really nice ceremony that we do at the end of the rains called the Pavarana Ceremony. And what the Pavarana Ceremony is it's a chance for us to get together as a community and ask the Sangha for forgiveness of any wrongdoings that you might have done over the past 3 months. Any sort of problems or issues that arose between you ask everybody for forgiveness. And then you also ask for Pavarana, which means you ask for admonishment. And admonishment, or not in the way of somebody saying something bad to you, of asking if there's anything you think I can improve myself with personally or in my practice, please let me know now. So it's a nice way to end the Vassa period, because especially if you're living in a big group of people and you're sort of stuck together for 3 months and you can't go anywhere and you're in each other's faces all the time and you just can't get away from these people. Obviously you have problems, and sometimes you have problems, sometimes you have issues. And so it's a nice way to end the rains retreat by saying, look, I'm sorry if I was not so nice during this period. If you do have any problems, please just let me know and I'll try to improve myself in the future. Because usually the rains retreat, it goes everybody starts the rains retreat and everyone's happy and really want to practice and all these kinds of things, and you're really psyched up for it. By then, about halfway through, you're starting to get sick of everybody, and it's oh, I wish I could go somewhere. I'm sick of this guy. I'm sick of this person. And then by about the last few weeks, it's cool, we're out of here. So Pavarana is a nice way to put aside any sort of problems that you may have had with people over that period of time. So that's, in general, that's our rules around the Vassa period, around our rains retreat period. But what do we actually do as monastics during that time? It is, as I said before, it is a time for us to put down the more external things that we might be doing, any kind of projects or building or things like that that might be taking up some of our time, and we use it as a time to re-establish ourselves and refocus on the reasons why we wanted to become monastics. Because the Rains retreat period is a time where we don't have to do those things, but it is also the time where you recollect of it's another year has passed for you being a monastic. So as a monastic, you count how many years you've been amongst by how many vassas that you've gone through. So ostensibly, if you were ordained 2 days ago, in the next 3 months, you'd have one vassa. So, but then, then the next year after the next vassa, you'd have 2 vassas. So it all works out in the end. But we just count how long we've been basically our monastic birthdays by the amount of vassas that we've gone through. So, as I said, we use this time to re-establish ourselves, and we might make determinations during this period where, say for example, we practice a little bit more seriously, or we do more practice, or we do some kinds of practices that really sort of go against the grain of the things that we want to do. So what a lot of monastics will do in this period, they might do some of the what we call some of the 13 aesthetic practices that the Buddha recommended we do. So, for example, a monastic might determine for the duration of the 3-month period, they might determine just to eat alms food. So when they go on alms round, they'll only eat the food that they get on alms round. They won't accept anything that's back in the monastery. Or they might determine to maybe just eat a certain amount, say maybe 20 mouthfuls or 30 mouthfuls or something like that. Or decide not to take any of the afternoon allowables that we can have in the afternoon. We might make other determinations around our practice. Say, for example, we might be doing X amount of hours, and we decide we're going to do more than that. So if we're doing 6 hours of practice a day normally, then we decide, okay, during the Vassa, I'm going to do 12 hours of practice. So, and we can do there's other things as well that a lot of monastics will do. They might take on what we call the sitters practice, where you don't lie down. And we might do that maybe like one night out of the week, and so we'll stay up all night practicing Dhamma, practicing meditation, listening to talks, make one day out of the week the sitters practice. Or might do it for longer periods, might do it for a week, 2 weeks, a month, maybe even 3 months we might do this practice. So we can make these kinds of determinations to really re-establish ourselves in our practice. But it's also, because we're not doing external projects, it also is a good time for us to maybe learn or relearn some of the things that we haven't had the time to do. So a lot of times monastics might take this time to learn what we call the Patimokkha, which is our rules. It's a 45, 50-minute chant. Might take that time to memorize that, or memorize other suttas and things like this, or memorize some of the chanting that you hadn't done. Another thing that we do in my tradition is during the rains, because we're all usually together, we'll get together a few times out of the week and go over our rules again and sort of refresh our knowledge and sit around and talk about our rules, and just so we're clear on our understanding of our rules. It's a nice time to do it because, as I said, you're not doing any of the external projects. So we get together and we go over our rules again. We go over our Vinaya, our Patimokkha. So we might do many of these different kinds of things, or determine to listen to talks every day. So, but what do as lay people? That's what we do as monks. But for lay people, what do lay people do? Anybody maybe that's grown up in a Buddhist country, they know that the Buddhist Lent period, it's special not only for the monastics but for people in that culture, in that community as well. They might take that 3-month period to make some sort of changes in their lives. They might determine, okay, for this 3 months, for the Vassa period, I'm going to give up smoking, or I'm going to give up drinking, or so they'll try to change some habits and do better habits. Or they might do something a little bit more in line with Dhamma. They might decide, okay, well, I'm really going to keep the 5 precepts really well during this 3-month period. Or if they are already keeping the 5 precepts, they might decide, well, I'll keep the 8 precepts. I might keep the 8 precepts for this period of time for the Buddhist Lent. Some might even go a little further than that and go, well, I'm going to like the monastics are doing, they're increasing the intensity of their practice. I might do that as well. I might, decide to maybe take up a regular meditation practice or a regular meditation and chanting practice. Or if they're doing that, again, extending the periods. So if they're chanting and meditating for half an hour a night, they might up that to an hour a night. Some people may even get a little bit more serious than that as well and decide, well, during this 3 months range retreat period, I'll also do a retreat. I'll go to stay at a monastery for a period of time, or I'll go to the monastery more regularly. I'll go there, say, every week or twice a week or something like that. And some might even say, well, I'm going to do a 2-week retreat or a month retreat. And some people may even get more serious and take that full time off from work and stay in the monastery for 3 months. And if they are really serious and really want to do it, they might sort of put their life on hold for a little while. And actually, this happens quite a lot in Thailand, that people will ordain just for the 3-month period. So as the monastics are increasing the intensity of their practice, so can lay people. You can use this period to actually re-establish yourself and reaffirm yourself in the practice. And so do you have to do that? Like, it's, obviously as monastics we this is our rules. We have to do this at this period of time. But do you have to do it? It's obviously no. You don't have to if you don't want to. But it is a nice thing to do, because, as I said, there's something sort of special about this time of the year, and it relates a lot to what happened the special day that we had yesterday of Asala Puja, which was the day that the Buddha actually gave the first teaching. And so I'll run over Asala just in case anybody doesn't really know at home, and I'll sort of tell the story of that quickly and sort of see how it actually relates to this time of the year and how you can sort of use that in your practice as well. So for anybody that doesn't know, Asala Puja is the day that the Buddha gave the first teaching, and so we call it Dhamma Day. And what happened on Asala Puja was after the Buddha became enlightened at Bodh Gaya a few months ago, while he was dwelling in the bliss of enlightenment, he had the thought that this Dhamma is so deep and so profound, I don't think anybody will be able to understand this at all. And he was asked by the king of the Devas to say, please actually go and teach the Dhamma. But the Buddha was reluctant to actually teach, because he thought it was something that was so profound that nobody would actually get it. So after he agreed to teach, he wandered by stages from Bodh Gaya to Varanasi, because he knew that at Varanasi there were 5 ascetics there. The 5 ascetics, what we call the Panchavakkhya. They were the ascetics that attended to the Buddha when he himself was practicing ascetic practices. But the 5 ascetics had abandoned him because they thought because he ate something, they thought he'd gone soft and he'd given up his quest for enlightenment. So the Buddha went. He found out that they were staying in the deer park at the deer park in Varanasi. So he wandered there to actually see them and teach the Dhamma to them. So as the Buddha was approaching the 5 ascetics, they saw him coming, and they as I said, they abandoned him because they thought he'd given up the quest for enlightenment. So they made the determination of like, okay, we're not going to talk to him. He's gone soft. Let's just ignore him. But there was something about the Buddha's cadence when he came and approached them that they basically gave up that, and they received him, and they were happy to see him. So they offered him to sit down. And so the Buddha actually said to the 5 ascetics at that time, he said to them, I have become the Samma Sambuddha. I have attained complete enlightenment. I have complete and clear understanding now. Listen, and I'll teach you the Dhamma. I'll teach you the Satcha Dhamma, the true Dhamma, so you can realize the Amata Nibbana, or the deathless Nibbana. So the Buddha stated this to them, and they were a bit apprehensive. They're like, oh, didn't you give up your quest for enlightenment, they were a little bit skeptical of this kind of claim. They weren't really receptive. So the Buddha changed tactics with them, and he said to them, in the whole 6 years that you were attending to me, did I ever make a claim of enlightenment? I could have made this claim at any time and you would have believed me. But I never actually made this claim. I never said that I'd realized the Dhamma to this level. And they realized that, the 5 ascetics realized that the Buddha, he'd never bragged or gloated or anything like that. So they became a lot more receptive to the Buddha, and that he'd actually attained the Dhamma and he'd actually realized enlightenment. So there was this sort of like switch in attitude from them, from the 5 ascetics, of being somebody that's resistant, but then now they're ready to actually hear the Dhamma. And so on that night of what we call Asala Puja, you can just sort of imagine it in the deer park. It was this nice forest, and it's very, very simple. It was just the Buddha sitting there in the forest with 5 ascetics seated around him. And at that time, he realized that it was the right time for the Dhamma to arise in the world. And so as soon as he spoke the first words that came out of his mouth of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, of the setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma, this was the point that the Dhamma arose in the world so that people could actually listen to it and understand it. So we already had the Buddha in the world, and that night in the deer park, as soon as he started to speak, then the Dhamma also arose in the world. This was very, very special, because it's not just that it was this ethereal thing. Now this has been put into language, it's been put into a system where we can actually practice. And so for anybody that maybe doesn't know, the Dhammacakka was Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the setting in motion the wheel of Dhamma. This is the central teaching of the Buddha, where he taught the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. So as he taught this, the Buddha's in the world and the Dhamma's arising in the world. But importantly as well, what was also happening at that time is one of the 5 ascetics was starting to realize the Dhamma. When the Buddha was talking about the 4 Noble Truths and the Eightfold Paths, he started to understand, and he actually broke through. And by the end of the sutta, one of the ascetics, Kotanya, had realized the first level of enlightenment, what we call a stream enterer or sotapanna. And so now there was the fully enlightened Buddha in the world, but there was also another person that had realized the Dhamma, that had realized enlightenment. And this really like overjoyed the Buddha, because, as I said, he was hesitant to actually teach the Dhamma. He thought it was too deep and too profound. But after his first teaching, somebody was able to become enlightened and realize this. And so with the enlightenment of Kotanya, the Buddha exclaimed with joy, Anyasi Vatapo Kotanyo, which means Kotanya knows, Kotanya knows. And so with that, the Sangha arose in the world as well. Now that there was another person besides the Buddha who had become enlightened, the Sangha actually arose in the world at that time as well. So right at that point is the time where that which we take refuge in, the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, the triple gem, that arose in the world at that time. And so the Buddha, the Dhamma, Sangha has come to completion now, and it's available for people to take refuge in and to listen to. So with that, Kotanya asked for the going forth, and the Buddha gave it to him, the Ehi Bhikkhu Upasampada, which is the come bhikkhu, and he became the first Buddhist monastic. So once the Buddha realized that he could teach the Dhamma to people and that people could understand it, he decided to actually stay there and teach the remaining 4 ascetics, teach them so they could realize the Dhamma as well. So over the next 4 days he taught, and on each subsequent day, each one of the 5 four remaining ascetics realized Sotapanna as well. They realized the first level of Dhamma because the Buddha was staying in one place, teaching the Dhamma. And on the fifth night, the Buddha gave the second teaching, what we call the Untitled Chapter, Sutta, the teaching on the discourse of non-self. And on that fifth night, then all of the five ascetics attained enlightenment. So there was 6 fully enlightened beings in the world. And this was really the start of the first rains retreat, because it was, as I said, Asala and the rains retreat, they coincide with each other. So because the Buddha realized that he could give the teachings, and if he stayed in one place and taught these people, then they could realize the Dhamma as well. They had an opportunity to practice the Dhamma and realize the Dhamma. This was something that was quite beneficial. And so it's beneficial for those people, that the 5 ascetics that were practicing, and now there's 6 enlightened beings in the world on the 5th day. But something also was happening on the 5th day as well. Is there was a young man from the city of Varanasi who was the son of a very, very wealthy merchant, and he had absolutely every kind of material wish that he could desire. You could basically say he was like a trust fund baby or something. He had parents very, very wealthy. He had a whole a female retinite and entertainers and all these kinds of things. And on that 5th night, he actually woke up very, very early in the middle of the night and sort of saw everybody, all these people that were entertained him and were a source of pleasure for him. He saw them asleep and just lying, drooling and all these kinds of things all over the place. And he started to become very dispassionate. And he saw that this was not something that was very appealing. And so he started to say to himself, depressed am I, oppressed am I, depressed am I, oppressed am I, and he just started to ruminate, and he just wandered out of his mansion, just wandered, and just he's ruminating, depressed am I, oppressed am I, just kept wandering and wandering and wandering, and then finally in the very, very early hours of the morning, he actually came across the Buddha in the deer park. The Buddha was up walking meditation in the morning. And so this very rich young man who had never ever practiced the Dhamma, never thought about this, just that night had just started to bring about some dispassion to the world, came across the Buddha because the Buddha was staying in the deer park. And the Buddha noticed that he was ruminating, and so he invited him to sit down. And the Buddha actually instructed him. He gave him what's called the gradual teaching, which is where the Buddha would start by teaching about dana, about generosity and giving. And then he moved on to the benefits of sila, of morality. And then he moved on to sagga, which is the celestial realms. But then he moves on to the dangers of the dangers of sensual pleasures, getting involved in sensual pleasures. But then the joy of renunciation, of nekkhamma. And then finally taught the 4 Noble Truths. And with this young man, this trust fund baby, this person that had never ever practiced meditation in their life, actually became a Sotapanna and reached the first level of enlightenment. And this young man, Vassa, he was awakened to the Dhamma just by hearing the Buddha, just because he wandered out and the Buddha just happened to be there. And so now there was seven enlightened beings in the world. And obviously, so the next morning, Vassa's parents wake up, realize Vassa's gone, so his father wanders out to try to find Vassa. Obviously, he's missing a child kind of thing, and so he's quite worried. Vassa was wearing these golden slippers, and so where he'd walked to, there was a thin trail of gold there. So his father followed the golden slippers, the trail of the golden slippers. Cinderella, but anyway. So he followed the trail of the golden slippers, and he came across where the Buddha was. And obviously the father's very he's worried. He's lost his son. He asked the Buddha, "Have you seen my son? Have you seen Yasa?" He's in a heightened state of agitation because he's lost his son. And there must have been something very, very calming and soothing about the Buddha, because the Buddha said to him, "Just sit down, sit down. Call off the search party for your child, and I'll teach you the Dhamma." And so Yasa's father sat down and listened to the Dhamma, and again the Buddha gave him the gradual teaching, and Yasa was actually sitting off to the side. And after the Buddha gave Yasa's father the gradual teaching, Yasa, as he became an arahat. But his father realized the benefit of the Dhamma and gained great faith in the Buddha. And so he asked for refuges he asked for the 3 refuges in the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. So Yasa's father became the first male lay disciple of the Buddha, the first upasok. So in the subsequent day, Yasa's father invited the Buddha and the now 6 other fully enlightened beings to his house on the 7th day. And on that day in that house, then Yasa's mother and his sister became the first female lay disciples of the Buddha. And so this all came about because the Buddha had decided to stay in one place and to teach. And so people could now actually come and listen to the Dhamma and gain benefit from the Dhamma. And subsequently, because it was the rains, the Buddha decided to stay on in the deer park at Varanasi for a further 2 months. And in that time, something like 53 of Yasa's friends came, listened to the Dhamma. These were people as well that had never practiced meditation before. These were the upper echelons of Varanasi society. And they were actually able to come and practice the Dhamma. And by the end of that 2 months, 53 of Yasa's friends all became arahats. And so many people in Varanasi were able to come and listen to the Dhamma because the Buddha decided to stay in that place for that 2 months. And so at the end of the 2 months, the Buddha said to these now 60 arahat, these fully enlightened beings, he said to them all, "Go out now. You've become enlightened to the Dhamma, so go out now and teach the Dhamma that is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the end, because there's other people out there that have little dust in their eyes and that they can see the Dhamma as well." So this is why this period of Asala Puja and the period of the rains retreat is very special. It's because the Dhamma has now arisen in the world, and if there are members of the Sangha that can stay in one place, it offers people the opportunity to come and listen to the Dhamma and gain teachings and gain understanding. And so if you are one like the 5 aesthetics that is practicing, you've come in contact with the Buddha and the Dhamma, and you can practice this and gain enlightenment from this. But even if you are somebody that's maybe not practicing so much, say for example like Yasa and his family and his friends, there's this great opportunity now to come in contact with the Dhamma and to realize the Dhamma and practice the Dhamma. So this is why this particular period of Asalaha and the rains retreat is very, very, very special. It's an opportunity not just for monastics to reinvigorate themselves in practice, but also for many other people to come and listen to the teachings. So with that, that's probably enough for me. Enough of me talking about the benefits of the Asala Puja and the Vassa. Hopefully it's been of benefit to you in some way. And hopefully I do wish everybody all the best during this Vassa period, the rains retreat period. Hopefully you have the opportunity to practice and to realize the Dhamma just like the 5 ascetics and just like Yasa and all his retinite. Satu.
Thank you, Ajahn. We do have a couple of questions here.
Very good.
So first question is, what does the Buddha say about dealing with anger? Not necessarily anger and an immediate solution, but pent-up anger and a past that creeps up, seemingly out of nowhere.
I'm I'm not sure if the Buddha sort of like talked about like pent up anger in any way. Obviously, he talked about anger more generally, and that anger is one of the underlying defilements that keeps us stuck in the cycle of rebirth, the dosa. It's something that we like innately have to deal with. So anger can come in many forms. It can come in a form of sort of like dissatisfaction. It can also come in the form of all out hatred and violence and all these kinds of things. So how did the Buddha teach to deal with anger? Well, this is obviously through training the mind, through a practice like meditation. We start to learn to train the mind and practice, and in a way start to learn to control the defilements that arise in the mind and understand these defilements that arise in the mind, the defilement of anger. So whether it's full-scale hatred, full-blown anger, or it's just sort of pent-up anger that arises out of nowhere, it has the same underlying quality. This underlying quality that it is this form of anger that has arisen in the mind. So how do you actually deal with that then? Well, we can do it by many different ways. You can learn by controlling the mind and actually seeing that anger is just something that merely arises, remains for a while and passes away, and you can try to watch that objectively. Or you can do practices that the counterbalance to that. Say, for example, a practice like developing loving kindness. You can do this, and this helps alleviate the anger that arises in the mind. So there's really the main way that one sort of deals with anger is through training one's mind to let go of this anger that we actually have, or to change the quality of the mind into something that is more in the realm of kindness. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Ajahn. Our second question here is relating to the person you were, Kondono? Was that the Kondono?
Kondono, yeah.
What Kondono actually, hi Ajahn, what Kondono actually understood that made him reach the first level of enlightenment in the first sermon? It must have been more than the Four Noble Truths.
Yeah, well, it's obviously hard for me to say exactly what Kondono actually realized, or what was the point that he actually hooked onto that made him become a Sotapanna. But you would say it would be understanding something about the Four Noble Truths. So understanding that there inherently is dukkha in one's life, understanding that the cause of one's dukkha, of one's suffering, is our craving and our attachment to something, and understanding that it can be let go of by practicing the Eightfold Path. So he had to have had some insight into that, because that was the actual teaching. For Kotanya to gain insight into that, insight into the Four Noble Truths at some level, and he became what we call a Sotapanna. So there's this aspect of becoming a Sotapanna where one sees through the transient nature of the self. So he would have understood that to some level. He would have understood, gone beyond, adherence to any kind of external practices, any kind of external rites or rituals towards enlightenment. He would have realized that was something that can arise in the mind. So the qualities of somebody that becomes a Sotapanna or a stream enterer, that's what Kotanya realized at that point. But he would have had insight into the Four Noble Truths as well. But it's in saying that, I say that with the caveat of like, I don't know what Kotanya realized at that point in time. We can only go by, well, he listened to the Four Noble Truths and he attained Sotapanna, and there's those qualities that a Sotapanna reaches to. So that's probably about all I can actually say of what Kotanya actually knew.
Thank you, Ajahn. Just on that, just it was occurring to me as you were. It seems almost extraordinary, almost like fairy tales. Some of these stories from the time of the Buddha.
Yeah.
We, as a practitioner, and many practitioners have been doing this for years, and seemingly, overnight, these people turn into arahants.
Yep.
I sort of, when I hear that, apart from it being occurring as a fairy tale, it would seem as though they have been practicing in the past, as opposed to it just, having the Buddha around and it just a light switch turned on.
Yeah. It's it can be, hearing these stories sometimes can be both. It can be very, very inspirational, or it also can be very, very disheartening of like, Vassa, the guy was like a trust fund baby and he just wandered out of his palace. He'd never done any meditation and all of a sudden he's enlightened just by listening to the Buddha talk for half an hour. So it can be both of those things. So one of the things that I've sort of heard of over the years, just about people in the time of the Buddha. Obviously, as Buddhists, we sort of ascribe to the doctrine of reincarnation and building. We build our karma over numerous lifetimes. What is one of the general interpretations of this is that for a Buddha to arise in the world, the Buddha has to build his barami over many, many lifetimes. Now, for a Buddha to arise in the world, he has to do that. But then also there are people around him that will also aspire to, say, for example, become like the great disciples of the Buddha, or to be born in the time of the Buddha. So people, you even see that now in some of, let's say, for example, like Mahayana traditions, where people make a determination to become a Buddha or be born in the time of the Buddha and all these kinds of things. So these things were happening at the time of our Buddha as well. So people had made those kinds of determinations. So they'd built enough good karma and enough good barami over many, many lifetimes to actually get to that point where they were born in the time of the Buddha and born around the Buddha. And so you could say their spiritual faculties were very, very ripe at that point in time. And so they were able to seemingly just hear the Buddha speak once and become enlightened. So it's something that these individuals had developed over many, many lifetimes. So for us now, we're 2,564 years later. Maybe we didn't actually make that determination to be born in the time of the Buddha and become enlightened in the time of the Buddha. Each of us has our own karma and our own parami. So we work with what we've got. But we might become disheartened and think, well, I've been practicing for many years, but I haven't actually realized the Dhamma. But one thing you can think of as well is like how fortunate you are to be born in a time where the Buddha's teachings are available to you. There's so many. Before 2,600 years ago, anybody in society was not wasn't able to actually realize the Dhamma. But you've been born in an age where you have access to the Buddha's teachings. So the Dhamma actually has arisen in the world. And the Sangha has arisen in the world, people that can pass on the teachings. So you are still very fortunate to have this opportunity to build good karma, to practice, to have this available there and be moving forward and building more of your own good karma. So while it can seem fantastical that these people just become enlightened just on hearing one teaching, and it's for me, it's like, I've been doing this for years, and I don't seem to be getting anywhere. So I've progressed a little bit, but I'm nowhere near like Gordanyo, just listening to the Dhamma. I've listened to the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta I don't know how many times, and I haven't become enlightened. So it's not on the cards for me. But I have been born at a time where I have access to that teachings, and I can make the best of those teachings, and I can continue to practice.
Thank you, Ajahn. Bhante, is it also right that one of the reasons living in one place for Vassa is an opportunity for practice that sometimes doesn't come up through living together?
Yeah. There is that aspect of it where it's one can, for me myself, I'm actually staying by myself this Vassa, so it's a good opportunity to just work on my own practice without having to sort of worry about community engagement and all these kinds of things. Has its pros, has its cons, but usually what a lot of us say, for example, I can only speak for like living in Thailand. What we do a lot of the time is maybe we've ordained at a bigger monastery, where it's convenient to ordain, and you can get some training and all these kinds of things. But maybe in the Vassa you might decide, well, this monastery's, there's a lot going on, so I'll go to a smaller monastery where there might only be, 2 or 3 or 4 or even, maybe even 5 monks. So you're in a lot smaller community, so you don't have to, there's not as much going on. So you can take that as an opportunity to, get away a little bit from the bustle of a bigger community and live in a smaller community and spend more time practicing. But in essence, so it is right, yes, you can use that to stay a little bit more isolated at that time. But in general, it is a time where we do tend to put a lot more of those, like the bigger projects, aside for that period of time. I guess one thing, say for example, maybe in some of the bigger monasteries that you might stay in as a monastic, and as I said, in Thailand, like many people will actually ordain for that 3-month period. So you've got a lot of, depending where you live, you've got a lot of new monks. You've got people that have just sort of come in, they've been a monk for like 2 weeks, they don't know what's going on. So they need a lot of training, they need to be taught a lot, they need a lot of care, they need a lot of attention. You need to have a particular kind of schedule for them to follow so they can actually start to realize what it's like to be a monk. And so maybe if you've been practicing a few years and you know all this basic stuff, it might be good for you to get away from that for a period of time. And as I said, go to like one of those smaller places. So it can be an opportunity for us to do that as well. But the main thing is like the bigger external projects, we usually put those down and usually use this time to actually, practice more and live a little bit more quietly and in more isolation and have a bit more of a retreat.
Thank you, Ajahn. Just one more question here. Yep. What would be the best way to repent for breaking the precepts? I realise Buddhism isn't about punishment, but is there an act I can take to neutralise my karma after losing my temper, etc.?
There's ways that you can do this, but to think of it in terms of neutralizing your karma and sort of like rubbing it out of, I've done this bad thing, I want to repent, I want to be forgiven, and I want to rub this bad karma out. Karma doesn't really work in that way. You can't just like ask for forgiveness and get rid of it. But what you can do is do actions that build better karma for you. So how can you actually repent? Well, this is quite a good thing to do, actually, to start with, to at least have this compunction in your own mind to actually want to make up for something bad that you've done. Say, for example, if you got angry or something like that. So, you don't have to be a Buddhist to do this, but you can say sorry. You can say sorry to the person. You can admit when you're wrong. You can admit when you've actually done something that's hurt or harmed somebody. You can make amends at least in some way by admitting that you've done something wrong to someone. A good way to do this is to externalize it, if you can. Externalize it and make it known to maybe the person that you potentially hurt, or even to somebody that you know that's a good friend. For example, you might, let's say you've decided to keep the 5 precepts, but you go out, you go out and you have a glass of wine or something, and you think the next day, I was like, I really, I just sort of got caught up in the moment, and I shouldn't have drunk a glass of wine. I decided to keep the 5 precepts. You can't go and sort of like knock on the door and confess to the people that you drunk alcohol with. It's like, I did a really bad thing last night. I had a glass of wine with you and it was terrible. And they'll be like, I had a good time. So you can repent in different ways, where if you have like another Dhamma practitioner friend or something like this, you can say to them, it's like, look, I've decided to keep the 5 precepts, and I just sort of slipped, and I drank a glass of wine the other night. I know this wasn't something that was in line with the 5 precepts, but I'm going to try to do better again. And if they're a good Dhamma friend, they will say, well, good, it's good that you realize this, and it's good that you're trying to make amends for this. And this is actually what we do as monastics. We have a lot of rules. And when at least every 2 weeks, before we recite our patimokkha, we recite our rules, we get together and we talk to our other monastic friends and say to them, it's like, okay, in the past 2 weeks, I did this and I did this and I did this. I realized it was wrong. I just sort of fell off, but I'm going to try to become better. And usually the other monastic will say, very good, it's good that you recognize this. Try to refrain yourself and try to train yourself in a better way. So, and we can do this at any time. We can, if we do something one day and we realize that it was against the rules, you can get another monk and you can confess to them. So actually this act of externalizing the thing that you potentially have done wrong is a very, very good way for you not to just erase the karma that you may have made, but a way for you to restrain yourself and to do better in the future. And that's really the only way to get rid of your past bad karma, is to make good new karma. You can't just magically make this bad karma disappear. You have to build good and new and wholesome karma that covers it over, you could say. There's a teacher in Thailand who passed away last year. His name was Lumpur Ban, and he gave me, I was talking to him at one time, and somebody basically asked the same kind of questions, like, how do I get rid of my past bad karma? He's like, you can't actually get rid of it. What it's like, it's like a bad karma is like a pool of dirty water that's sitting on the ground. And so how do you get rid of bad, dirty, disgusting, muddy water that's lying there on the ground? You have to hose it away with clean water. And so the only way we can actually get rid of past bad karma is by hosing it away with the good, wholesome karma that we've actually made. So this is really the only thing we can do. Realize that we've done something wrong. Realize that we've harmed somebody in some way, even if we intended to do it or we didn't intend to do it. Sometimes we harm people and we're not actually intending to do it. But we can try to at least make amends for that by admitting that we've done something wrong, or we've harmed somebody in some way. And by externalizing it and by asking for forgiveness and really actually saying you're sorry to that person.
Thank you, Ajahn. That was the last question. We've got about 15 minutes remaining. Yeah. I did have an off-topic question.
Which, for sure.
Which The last couple of days, in fact, yesterday there was a rally in Melbourne and in Sydney, the Freedom Rally. There seems to be a global movement around that around the COVID restrictions. Can you talk a little bit about what freedom means from a Dhamma sense?
I'm guessing these people are thinking of freedom in a different sense. Obviously, their freedom to move around, the freedom to do what they want, freedom to have their life operate in a particular kind of way. They're wanting these people that are partaking in these, and I'm generalizing. I'm guessing of what they want. That they think that they're oppressed in some way. So they're rallying against that, and they're getting out, and they're how would you say, making themselves very, very loud, and saying that they actually want freedom and they feel oppressed. Now, that's they have the right to actually go and do that. That's if that's how they feel and that's what they want to do. Well, then they have the right to actually do that. They live in a free society, so they can actually do those things. But if you look at it more from a Buddhist perspective, from the perspective of what does freedom mean for a Buddhist, what does freedom mean in terms of Dhamma? It's a freedom from the oppression of any kind of negative states of the mind, of any greed, hatred, and delusion. Gaining true freedom from those things that disturb us. Greed, hatred, and delusion in the mind. These are the things that continually, make us act in these, repugnant kind of ways. It's the freedom from the influence of those things. We become free of any kind of desires to want things a particular kind of way. Our freedom that comes through Dhamma practice and through Buddhism is the freedom of accepting reality for what it is and understanding reality for what it is, whether it's a reality that we enjoy and that we find pleasure from, or it's a reality that we don't enjoy and we take no pleasure from. We can just accept this reality for whatever it actually is. So we're free from the oppression of wanting reality to be a particular kind of way. We're free from any desires that are driven by greed, hatred, and delusion. These desires of greed, hatred, and delusion drive us to do strange things. So we're not oppressed by these. What does oppression mean? Oppression means you're being controlled in some particular kind of way. There's some sort of external influence that is, controlling your life in a particular kind of way. And so, for us as Buddhists, we don't necessarily see that this is an external thing. We see that we're oppressed internally. We're oppressed internally because of greed, hatred, and delusion. The story that I told about Vassa, he saw on the outside that these things in life, in his external world, they were depressive, they were oppressive. But it's not just the external world. We can draw dispassion from the external world, but really what we're dissatisfied with is our reaction to the way that reality is around us. So real freedom for us is the freedom to become released from the oppression of a particular kind of reality that we think that we either want or we don't want. If we can become, through our practice, if we can become free of that, then it doesn't matter the external situation that one is in, whether one's the son of a wealthy merchant in Varanasi and has every conceivable pleasure in the world, whether one is living in a modern society where we're under the grips of pandemic and a lockdown and a stay at home. We're not worried by these external things, whether they're pleasurable or whether they're painful for us. We're just content with reality of however it is. And if we can gain freedom from this external reality, then we truly do actually have freedom.
Thank you, Ajahn. No more questions.
No more questions? Okay. Did you want to maybe do there was something that you were particularly going to read out or something? Or? Offline, okay, yeah, for sure, no problem. Well, if that's the case, we might have an early mark today. So I wish all of you that have listened to me today, hopefully some of this has been a benefit to you, and I do wish over the course of the next few months you have the opportunity to get out there and practice a lot more. We're in lockdown, so hopefully you have a lot more time to actually practice Dhamma at the moment. You can listen to a lot of teachings online. So I do wish you the best for this Vassa period, and I wish you all the best in your practice and in your life.